What's up, you sick mother bluffers? If you're new to the channel, thanks for checking it out, and if you're a returning visitor, please know that I appreciate you very much. We got a lot of cash game action to cover in this one, so without further ado, let's get into it. About an orbit goes by before I get involved in the pot. In this one, there's a limb for middle position before I look down at pocket sixes in the cutoff. I call, button raises to 8, small blind calls, middle position limper folds, and I make the call. We go full ways to a flop of 3, 4, 6. I flop top set. Small blind checks. I know the player on the button has a tendency to c-bet and bluff a lot, so I decide to check, and the plan completely backfires as they check back. The turn comes a 10, on which the small blind leads for 20. There's a bunch of draws I need to protect against, and a possible pair of 10s I need to get value from. I raise to 70. The button gets out of the way. Small blind thinks for a bit before making the call. They announce a check in the dark as we go heads up to the river, which comes the king of hearts. In theory, there's not a lot of hands I'm going to get value from now that the draw's bricked and there's an overcard to the 10. Still, I've got a set. I have to try and extract some more value from my opponent. I fire a bet of 110. They once again go into the tank. They think things over for about a minute before calling. I show my set and it's good. The small blind shows 4-3 of hearts for flop 2 pair. The very next shuffle, as you can see, I'm still stacking my chips from the previous hand. Action falls to me the low jack and I pick up ace queen offsuit. I open to 15 and the cutoff calls. Rest of the table folds. We go heads up to a flop of 6-4-4 on which we both check. The turn comes a king. I can represent ace king, king queen here, so I fire a delayed c-bet of 20 and the cutoff makes the call. The river comes to 9 of clubs. Thinking about what to do here, I get the sense that this card doesn't really change much for my opponent. This board is pretty dry, and if they called the turn, they will most likely call a river bet with a hand that beats me. Also, I know they have a tendency to overbluff, so while I can't get them to fold a better hand, I think I can get them to bet with a worse one. For those reasons, I decide to check, and they fire a bet of 35 bucks. I decide to look them up, and they quickly make the fold. They later told me they had ace high, so nice to get some extra value here. Alright, so session is going great so far. I've been playing for less than an hour, and I've almost doubled up. Let's jump into some bomb pots. In this one, we're playing 5-2-2 high-high. Everybody gets 5 cards, and we have to use any 2 cards to make the best Omaha hand possible on both boards. In this one, 7 of us see a flop of 9-9 ace rainbow on top, and ace 6 jack 2 clubs on bottom. I'm in under the gun with queen 9 6-6 deuce. I flop trip 9s on top, and a set of 6s on bottom. When the small blind checks to me, I bet 25, the low jack calls, and the rest of the table folds. The turn comes a jack on top, which doesn't change much. Bottom, however, comes a 6, giving me quad 6s. I fire a bet of 85 bucks, and sadly, my opponent makes the fold. In this one, we're playing 5-2-2 high-low, also known as double barrel. We're still using any 2 cards from our hand to make the best Omaha hand possible, but this time the pot is split between the highest hand and the lowest hand overall. To make a low, you need 3 cards under an 8 on the board and 2 cards under an 8 in your hand that don't make a pair. Hopefully, that makes sense. We go 7 ways to the flop, which comes 10 deuce 7 on top and 9-7 queen on bottom. I'm in under the gun with 10-10 9-9 8. I flop top set on top, middle set, and an open ender on bottom. Taking a look at my hand, I currently have the second nut high overall, the current nut high being a set of queens. There are currently no lows possible because there needs to be 3 cards under an 8 on either board. This is actually completely irrelevant for me because my lowest card is an 8, and you need 2 cards under an 8 in your hand to make a low, so it's actually impossible for me to make a low hand by the river. When the small blind checks to me, I'm going to bet out 30 and try to thin out the field, possibly take the pot down now or on the turn. I get called by the middle position player, and the small blind comes along as well. We go 3 ways to the turn, which comes an ace on top and a deuce on bottom. The ace is not the best card for me, as I downgrade to the 3rd nut high, now losing to pocket queens and pocket aces. It also puts a 3rd card under an 8 on the board, meaning that lows are now possible, so even if my trip 10s are good, I no longer have a claim to the entire pot. Small blind checks again. I slow down and check. The middle position player, one of the wildest players at the table, bets out 60 bucks. Small blind check calls for a second time. With this action, I'm thinking it's possible both players have a low with an ace, in which case a set of aces would not be possible. So, with the 3rd nut high, possibly the 2nd nut high, I decide to make the call. The river comes a 5 on top and a 3 on bottom. We once again check to the middle position player who bets 100 bucks, and for the 3rd time, small blind check calls. I'm in a bit of a dicey spot because the 5 on top now makes a straight for anyone holding 3-4, which was the nut low on the turn. That being said, I know the middle position player is capable of some very out of line plays, and the fact that the small blind check called 3 times makes me think they can't be that strong. In my head, I still only lose to pocket queens, so this is why I decide to ultimately make a pretty light call. Small blind shows, surprise, pocket queens, and middle position is actually going to scoop with a set of aces, and ace-6 for a 76 low. I'm still debating whether this was a punt or not. Yeah, it's probably a punt. Before we get into the next hand, I just wanted to point out that I had a hard time keeping track of my stack at this point, hence the question mark. So in this one, we're playing Drawmaha, that's 5-card draw, and Omaha. We all get 5 cards, we're using any 2 to make the best hand on the board, and we're trying to get the best 5-card combination in our hand. After the flop, we can draw up to 3 cards to try and improve our hand. 6 of us see a flop of 4 King 9, and I'm in the cutoff with King King 7 7 Deuce. I flop a set of kings, and I've got 2 pair in my hand, kings and 7s. Nice. Action checks to me, I bet 20, and surprisingly, I get called by 4 players. Heading into draw time, I'm going to throw out the 2 and hold on to my 2 pair. I draw an ace, which doesn't change much. Turn comes a 9, action checks to me for a second time, I bet $100, and everybody folds. The very next shuffle, we're doing another Drawmaha bomb pot. Flop comes King King 8, and I look down at King 7 6 4 4. I flop trip kings, and I've got a pair of 4s in my hand. Small blind checks. I decide to check to the undergun player who bets 15. It folds to me, and I make the call. Heads up, and heading into draw time, I throw away the 7 and the 6, and in return, I get a pair of 3s, so now I have 2 pair down. Turn comes a 9 of spades. I still got trips, which is a good hand, but in Drawmaha, it's not impossible that I'm already beat. I check to under the gun for a second time, they bet 35, and I make the call. River comes an ace, I check for a third time, and this time under the gun checks back, with King 9 for a boat on the board. My 2 pair down is good. Interesting that we both decided to play our hands pretty passively. We're going to chop. In this one, the $5 button straddle is on, and I look down at ace 10 in the small blind. I raise it up to 20, and only the button straddle makes the call. Quick note on this player, they are a very loose active player, and they love to apply pressure. This is going to come into play later in this hand. For now, we go heads up to a flop of 8-9-5. I check, and something I don't see them do very often, they check back. Turn comes an ace. I decide to play it sneaky here and check to my opponent. They take the bait, and they bet 50. I should raise here with the number of draws available on the board, but ultimately I opt for a call and let my opponent hang himself with the worst hand. Hoping for a clean river, it's a deuce of diamonds, doesn't come much clearer than that. I decide to continue with my plan, which is to check call any bet from my opponent. Just to show you I'm not lying, I'm going to cut to the table audio for a sec. Go. So yeah, my opponent bets 175. I don't even look at how much they bet or ask for a count, I just snap call. And they show ace 9 for 2 pair, fuck. One thing I noticed while editing this hand is that my opponent picked some pretty big sizings on the turn and river, overbetting the pot in both instances, so that's definitely something I'll be looking out for in my future battles with this player. In any case, the double barrel hand from earlier and now this one are going to put a serious dent in my stack. From being up almost 400 early in this session, I'm now down 100. I'm going to add on for 400, let's fight back. In this one we're playing double barrel. 8 of us see a flop of 6 King 8 2 spades on top. Ace 3 10 2 clubs on bottom. I'm in the small blind with 6 6 4 3 deuce, so I flop a set on top, and I've got a straight draw and the nut low draw on bottom. Action checks around to the low jack who bets 30. The hijack calls, I make the call, and the rest of the table folds. 3 ways to the turn, which comes a 4 of clubs on top, which opens up a possible straight, and bottom comes a 6 of clubs. I pick up another set of 6s, but the board opens up a flush. I do make a 64 low, which is the nut low. Action once again checks to the low jack, who goes all in for 85. The hijack folds, and I make the call. We're going heads up to the river, which comes a deuce on top and a break on bottom. Low jack shows a bigger set for the high hand, and my 4-6 is good for the low. We chop. In this one, I look down the ace jack offsuit from under the gun. I opened the action to 15, but I didn't notice that the button straddle was on, so there was a little bit of confusion as the big blind was calling the straddle at the same time as I was putting out my raise. Anyway, I get called by middle position, the button, and the big blind. We go full ways to a flop of 10-9-6 rainbow, on which we all check. Turn comes the queen of spades. Big blind checks to me, and having picked up an open-ended straight draw on a card that favors my range, I bet 40, and the big blind is the only player to make the call. We go heads up to the river, which comes the deuce of hearts, and the big blind checks again. Is ace high good here? Maybe, but I don't want to check back and be shown a hand like jack 10, 10-8, 8-9, 6-7, so I fire a bet of $90, and the big blind folds before the chips even hit the felt. Big pot incoming. In this one, we're playing double barrel. 6 of us see a flop of king 3 king rainbow on top, queen 7-9 rainbow on bottom. I didn't film my cards until a bit later in the hand, so let's keep them a mystery for a bit. Action checks to me and under the gun, and I bet 20. I get called by the low jack and small blind, and the big blind folds. Three-way to the turn, which comes the 8 of clubs on top and a 4 on bottom. Let's take a look at my cards. I've got king, 10, 4 deuce, ace, so I've got trip kings on top and the nut low draw on both boards. Small blind checks to me. I continue for 80. The low jack folds, and the small blind check raises pot for 335. Man, fuck that guy. I call. Let's go heads up to the river. Dealer, I'm going to need a card under an 8, please. Top comes a deuce, giving me the 3rd nut high, kings over deuces, and an 8 high nut low. And bottom comes a 5, giving me an even better 7 high nut low. Small blind announces all in with that little hand motion that says, man, I can't believe this idiot called me with the draw and got there. I announce call, and they show king 8 for the turn nut high, kings over 8s. I can't remember if they had a low, but it doesn't matter because I got the nut low, and so we're going to chop. Here's some more high-low action. In this one, I'm in the small blind with 10, 6, 4, ace, ace, starting with 2 aces. Nice. 7 of us see a flop of 8, 4, king, 2 clubs on top, and deuce, 9, 8, 2 spades on bottom. I've got a backdoor nut flush draw and some low draws on both boards. I also have a gut shot straight draw on bottom. Basically, a lot of draws, but nothing made yet. Start things off with a check. Checks around to the hijack who bets 25. The button calls. I make the call, and the rest of the table folds. We're going 3 ways to the turn, which comes a queen of clubs on top and a 3 of spades on bottom. Nothing changes for me as far as the high hand is concerned, but I do turn the nut 8 high low on bottom, and I partially block someone else from having it since I'm holding 2 aces. I decide to go for a sneaky check and instantly regret it as action checks around. The river comes a 9 on top and another 8 on bottom. No more checking this time, I lead for 100, and I love to see both the hijack and button make the call. We go to showdown, and I obviously win half the pot with my nut low. Hijack shows pocket deuces for deuces over 8s on bottom. Button shows 9-8 for 8s over 9s, and so they're going to win the other half of the pot. In this one, the under the gun straddle is on, and I look down at jack 9 suited in the hijack. Low jack raises to 15. I call. Button calls, and the straddler makes the call. We go 4 ways to a flop of 8, 9, 4 rainbow. Action checks to the low jack, who continues for 20. This is the player who I lost that pretty big pot to with ace 10 when they had 2 pair with ace 9. And here I noticed that they're picking a smaller sizing, which would indicate that they're not super strong. I think my pair of 9s is best at the moment, but it could definitely benefit from some protection. So I go for a raise to 70, folds back to the low jack who makes the call. We're going heads up to the turn, which comes a 10 of spades. Low jack checks. I'm going to try and get to showdown and check back. The river comes a brick deuce of hearts. My opponent checks for a 3rd time. I'm not sure if there's any additional value I can go for here. I just check back, and my pair of 9s is good. I pick up a nice pot. Hey guys, quick reminder that I'm co-hosting a meetup game at Final Table in Portland on October 21st. I really hope to see you there. And if you want to play online with me, check out the Button Clickers group on PokerBros. I have more information on the meetup game and PokerBros in the description box, so make sure to check it out. Thanks, let's get back into it. Warning. The actions performed in the following hand are for general entertainment purposes only and do not constitute sound poker strategy. Do not attempt to duplicate, recreate, or perform the same actions, as severe financial loss may result. The producer of this video is not responsible for any such loss. Alright, time for the hand of the vlog. To give you a little bit of context, there are a few very active and splashy players at the table who are not afraid of getting into it with mediocre holdings, and one of them, sitting to my right, may have referred to myself and another player as nits. I've been called far worse things, so that doesn't really affect me, but when action folds to me on the button and I look down at 3 deuce offsuit, I see an opportunity to put in a raise, take the pot down, flip my hand over, and show the table that, I can mix it up. So that's what I do. I put in a raise to 15, small blind folds, and the big blind calls. Shit, that wasn't part of the plan. It's all good though. I should be able to shut this hand down on the flop, which comes king 4-8, 2 diamonds. Big blind checks. Let's end it right there. I bet 20. And the big blind calls. Fuck. Okay. So I couldn't close on the flop. No big deal. Turn comes the queen of diamonds, which is a great card for my range. I have all the ace kings, ace queens, king queens, kings, queens. I have the nut flushes. Big blind checks again. All right, buddy. Time to put an end to this. This bet of 60 should do it. The big blind goes into the tank for about 10 seconds before making the call. Wow, okay. Remember when I said myself and another player got called nits? Did I mention the big blind is that other player? Oh man, there's close to 200 in the pot as we head to the river, which comes the jack of hearts. Okay, this board is now wetter than the set of an Adriana Sheshik video. The big blind checks for a 3rd time. What do I do now? After playing for hours, I finally managed to climb out of the hole and be in the black. It's getting late. Do I really want to throw it all away on the stupid bluff? Just because someone called me a nit? I'm already regretting ever getting involved in this hand, but I mean, I didn't make it all the way to the river to give up, did I? I grab $140 and toss them in the middle. And now my opponent goes into the tank for 2 whole minutes, which is a short amount of time in a lot of situations, but in my shoes, it feels more like 2 hours. Please fold. Please fold. Jesus, I'm an idiot. Please fold. Please fold. Please fold. Yes! Holy fuck, I get it through. I show my cards to the guy who called me a nit.
King 8.
Oh my god, he flopped 2 pair? Man, thank the poker gods for this run out. I don't think I was ever getting a fold if the turn and river came bricks. Phew, I can finally breathe. And tonight, I can go to sleep knowing that I have the respect of a drunken degenerate. My life is now complete. Let's go through one last hand. At this one, we're playing 5-2-2. I'm in under the gun with King Jack Jack 7-3. 8 of us see a flop of Queen 10-5, 2 hearts on top, and Jack 8-7, 2 clubs on bottom. I flop an open-ended straight draw and a Jack High flush draw on top, and top set on bottom. Pretty good start. When action checks to me, I lead for 20. Middle position player calls. Low Jack calls. The cutoff, who is a pretty tight player, raises to 60. Action folds back to me. I've got a pretty easy call. Even if I'm behind a set on top or a straight on bottom, I've got plenty of outs to take the lead, and the low jack is going to come along as well. 3 ways to the turn, which comes a king on top and a 10 on bottom. I pick up a pair of kings on top, I don't improve on bottom, and the board is getting straight here. Interestingly, action checks around. The river comes, a 6 on top and a 6 on bottom. I unfortunately break out on top, and bottom board is even straight here now. Action checks around one more time, and the low jack is actually going to scoop with a set of 10s on top and a straight on bottom. Man, it kind of sucks to start out so strong and not even win half of the pot. This concludes this episode. I first bought in for $400, almost immediately ran it up to 800, then back down to 300. I added on for another 400 and ended up cashing out for 915, booking a profit of 115 for the night. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck at the tables, and I'll catch you in the next one.